Hello and welcome to episode 18 of Subplot a Course, a podcast discussing a new science fiction literary work on the second Tuesday of every month, although it's the third in this case, thanks John, by casual fans just like you.
Wow, passive-aggressive already.
Wow.
I'm Stavros, and with me is someone who would much prefer to teach in 1958 instead of today, Charlie. Say hi, Charlie.
What? I mean, yeah, sure.
Yeah, and Charlie teaches math. And also with me is Vincent, who is looking into the correlation between wearing fedoras and liking certain colors in said fedoras. Vincent, yep, say hi.
That's not a public health question. That's a fashion question right there. Hats and hat colors, that's definitely not a public health thing. But hey,
Sounds like public health to me.
I guess it's mental health maybe, because maybe if you choose a really bad color, there's something wrong with you. But yeah, sure, hi.
And also with me is John, whose best engineering concepts probably work a lot like rabbit holes. Say hi, John.
They go nowhere.
I'm pretty sure rabbit holes go somewhere.
And John
They go somewhere none of us are going to go.
Hey, John, they just take years of your life away.
Oh,
Everything takes years of my life. Why are you guys throwing so much shade at me this episode? This is rough.
we miss you from last
I
episode.
know. I don't know. I still love you, John.
Thanks.
John is an aerospace engineer. And today we're talking about 11/22/63, written by Stephen King and published in 2011. And of course, you should be prepared for spoilers. So plot synopsis for this one. English teacher Jake Epping from 2011 discovers that his ill diner-owning friend Al has a time-traveling rabbit hole that actually does go someplace, in this case. But it's in his pantry and it leads back to 1958. And he's been using it to get cheap beef for his restaurant. However, the restaurateur has become too sick to deal with the real mission, preventing the assassination of John F. Kennedy in 1963. He enlists Jake to take the mission in his stead. Jake goes about assuming his fake identity for 5 years in the past, eventually setting up surveillance of Lee Harvey Oswald. Jake believes that the past has a will of its own, doing what it can to stunt any changes that he makes. During this time, he takes up residence in a small Texas town to teach, and eventually gets into a romance with a fellow teacher. But eventually, Jake manages to successfully prevent Oswald at the very last moment, but in the scuffle, his new fiancée is killed. He returns to 2011 to find out that the future has turned into a completely undesirable dystopia, which doesn't really matter because he was going to use the rabbit hole to reset time and rekindle the relationship with his deceased fiancée anyway. But
He was really old.
yes. But it turns out that using the rabbit hole so many times was causing so many different time threads to sprout out that it was basically almost causing the collapse of the entire space-time continuum. But he almost does it anyway because of love. But he eventually backs down and resets time without really doing much. And the universe is saved. Hooray.
See, it is just like taking years of your life away for no reason.
Yeah, it's a giant reset button. But anyway, so let's jump into some topics here. So the first thing here I want to talk about, is this novel actually considered science fiction? This is a Stephen King novel, of course. So there are some thriller elements in here, and a lot of love story stuff and a lot of fantastic elements. Let me weigh in on this first. For a while, until they talk about the origin of the yellow card man or the green card man, which we'll get a lot into that more specifically later. But until they finally tell you that yes, this is a known time travel method, that finally changed it from a fantasy story to a science fiction story, and it happened super late in the novel. What do you guys think?
I'm going to take a stand on this. I think it's definitely sci-fi. I've been wishy-washy for the last 17, 18 episodes. 17 episodes, 18. And you know what? I thought about this because we talked a little bit about what, is this a sci-fi book or not? I'm going to take a stand. This is definitely a sci-fi book. We made that other book where they did not explain a natural phenomenon, but it was biology-based. It wasn't technology. It wasn't like man-made technology-based. I think this one is. As long as we have an explanation that there is a scientific phenomenon going on, then it is sci-fi. So your explanation where the yellow card man and the green card man comes in and says we're time travelers. Done. It's sci-fi.
Yeah. That's a fair point. Until it got to that point, at least for me, I was like, what, there's no, like, how is he even going to explain this? It just kind of straddled the line for me until they finally were like, yes, time travelers from the future.
I agree.
Can I say it is a sci-fi thriller?
No.
No, okay.
Why do you say that? Just because it's Stephen King?
Well, because, like, that's the thing is, it has the sci-fi effect, like, aspects with, like, the past not wanting to be changed and, like, him knowing the future and everything like that. But, like, where it's most effective is when it's kind of putting in the thriller elements, like, when he gets really close and stopping, like, the various acts of violence throughout the books. Like, that's when I think the book is, like, the most effective, and I ended up staying up way too late reading because I was like, I gotta find out what happens. It wasn't necessarily like the sci-fi stuff, but like the thrillerness is what really works in the books, even though that's more like mundane thriller stuff than the sci-fi stuff.
What's mundane thriller stuff?
Not, you know what I mean. It's like what makes it
No,
what
I
makes
really
it a
don't.
thriller.
It's Charlie's dates on every Friday night.
Oh, damn.
I do think that it is sci-fi, but it is sci-fi the way that Manischewitz is an alcoholic drink and kombucha is an alcoholic drink. It's a very, very low percentage content of sci-fi to thousands of pages of non-sci-fi. So yes, if you had to binary classify this book, yes, it's sci-fi. But compared to many other sci-fi books, which are much more like, Bacardi 151 or like the really heavy hitters of the alcoholic world, it is a very lightweight sci-fi, in my opinion.
Okay, I think that's fair. I mean, there isn't a lot of focus on what makes sci-fi, what makes a sci-fi book sci-fi necessarily in this, just because it, like I said, like the it doesn't even really explain the elements until super late. I felt like it for a while. I was going through it, and I was about 2/3 or 3/4 of the way through. I'm like, this is kind of like a historical fantasy based on nothing. What if fantasy kind of a thing.
Like, I almost wondered if at the end they were going to have him be unable to return to the future and have him question if he's just crazy for the rest of his life.
Yeah. Although that could be a part of the thriller elements too, I guess.
Yeah. I'm a stats guy. The number of pages spent on sci-fi in this book were quite small, less than 1%. So it's a less than a 1% sci-fi book.
So much of it's dependent on the fact that he knows the future, that even though kind of what he's doing is like good for the 1950s, 16th setting, it's more of a period piece in terms of the details, it's still clearly sci-fi in terms of his actions and goals and what's going on.
Yeah, I think
so. A lot of the actions were teaching English and dating a teacher, and then it's like, oh shit, that's right, I'm supposed to save the world. But he's way better than the other guy who's like, oh, I'm here to get cheap meat. It's like, wow, how uninspired could you be with your chance of time travel? Like, the meat's cheaper, I'm buying it. Oh, by the way, I could save the world, but no, I bought so much cheap meat and I'm really tired now. You got to save the world on my behalf.
You got to make those cat burgers somehow.
That's true. Okay. Well, at least we all seem to agree that yes, it does in fact fit as a science fiction novel. That's good because this is a science fiction show. I just didn't want to have to be like trash this episode.
Is that what this is?
Wait, this is a show where we just throw shade at John all the entire episode?
I mean, that happens too.
I thought it was.
I don't know. It's like, yeah.
Okay, so let's move on. So, real question: how many of you guys Googled or looked up the word obdurate?
I did not actually.
Not
I know
me,
what it
because
means.
I was about to swear. I'm literate.
So real talk, I looked it up, but luckily the book just uses it so often. It's calling the past obdurate, but it sounds a lot like obstinate and almost means the same thing. So I didn't feel that bad when I looked it up, and I was like, he could just use the other
obstinate
word.
and durable. Obdurate.
Yes.
Kind of like how vocabulary works and how I have to teach my stupid students taking the SAT on frameworks and you figure out the words.
Can we make a word for is Charlie okay? Like, it's like just combine them all, right?
Just cram them all together.
Yeah.
So
I don't know, we could.
I think the reader needs to understand that we're not making like a mountain out of a molehill. Like Steven, I'm gonna call him Steven instead of Stephen King.
Our buddy Steven.
Steve. Well,
Stevie boy.
significantly in this book.
Yes,
I mean,
he's
it's
a
just
lot.
It's constant, which makes me almost think like he's a pretty successful author. You don't see this type of. It's not like he has a nervous method here. I just think that there's a reason he did it. I started thinking about it more, and I actually think maybe he had it almost as a chant to the reader.
John, would you say the book harmonizes?
Actually, I actually would take it one step further. I would say that Obdurate is almost the name of the antagonist for Jake, because it's a very interesting antagonist in the book in that you try and change the past, and the past fights against you and tries to kill you or do really bad things to you if you try and change it. I actually thought of that mechanism as an antagonist in the book, and if you had to put a name to him, maybe his name is Obdurate. Obdurate the antagonist.
Yeah. Totally. And to go more into that, as far as the past having a will, yeah, I totally agree. Like, if there is an antagonist in this book, it is the past, the obdurate past, as our buddy Stevie calls it.
Stevie Wonder.
This is devolved. This is devolved.
Can you edit in some Stevie Wonder music in the background?
Can we do that? Can we actually send a tweet to Stephen King and like hashtag him Stevie, come listen to our podcast to see how he weighs in on this?
And he won't.
But actually, I wanted to draw a comparison here because some of us on this show are playing some Dungeons and Dragons together, and as I'm reading this, I'm like, this the setting fighting against you, it's kind of like. The past is being run by a game master, a dungeon master, and just countering the players as they do their thing. And I'm like, this is exactly, I feel like Stephen King's like, he's played a tabletop RPG at some point, and he's like, I know what I want to do. I want to make a book about a character, and I'm just going to throw the setting at him.
Star Wars, I think you're glorifying yourself and saying that you are Destiny. Like Destiny, like everyone has a path, and Star Wars has created that path because Star Wars is our dungeon master. And he's like, no, you cannot deviate from the path. There's a dragon. You cannot run. You must go and face the dragon.
It's exactly like that. And it's like, we want to get off the railroad. And I'm like, well, the broken down car does technically appear. You could take it, but it breaks down in 5 minutes.
And then you die.
Yeah.
You want to go back through time?
Then like the hillbilly appears and tries to rob you. I don't know.
Stavros thinks that he's Stephen King.
Can I call him Stevie?
Yeah,
it's okay. I'll just see if I call him Stevie from now on.
Stabby.
Yeah, I wanted to bring that up. Just like you guys are saying, the antagonist is the setting in this case, and
I like it.
Yeah.
For a book where like you spend a lot of time about like mundane kind of thriller elements, to take Charlie's kind of words,
mundane
like
thrillers.
It's like will the football jock become the star of the play? Will he get to realize his love with the girlfriend sweetheart that he has? And then you're like, well, the obdurate past is about to kick all y'all in the nuts. It's like, oh, that's interesting.
That's kind of the reason I didn't like the giant, this is how the time travel works at the end, where they explain the yellow card man and all that stuff. Because I felt like it was explained well enough, like you got his opinion about how it was working, and having just a dude there to explain things and give names to things didn't really add anything.
It sounded like he got his funding cut for the last season. He was like, "Oh, we got to wrap it all up. Last episode, guys. Let's throw it all together."
You can definitely tell, like I feel like he sat down and he's like, what would be an awesome concept? Like trying to stop JFK and the settings trying to kill him, and then he's like, he got 3/4 of the way through. He's like, "Oh shit, I have to make this make sense."
No, you don't have to. That's the thing. It's kind of like some Spielberg movies where occasionally it's like, and the robots took him out of the water and he lived happily after. I'm like, screw you, AI, you suck. That movie's terrible. You could have just wrapped it up with the robot kid committing suicide and it would have been sad and effective, because that was the whole movie up until that point.
Is this another Charlie non sequitur?
I think so.
Pretty much.
Thanks, Charlie. Well, okay, so let's move on. So actually, as you guys have alluded to, it's this is a very long book. I think at least for me, this is the first Stephen King novel I've read. Is this any of you guys' first Stephen King novel?
Yep, same here.
Yeah. Anyone read Stephen King before?
Stevie popped my cherry.
I think I've read Stephen King before.
Okay.
The thing is, we've all seen or heard of Stephen King because Shining and I think we were talking about it Shawshank Redemption, a bunch of things were Stephen King inspired.
Like,
so we know Stephen King.
Like
Right.
when he went to Derry and it's like, there was creepy clown murder. So I was like, yeah, I know what that is.
But the reason why I bring it up, yes, he's self-referential, but this is not a succinctly told novel necessarily. Like he spends a lot of time talking about relatively plot, irrelevant stuff, like going to Derry, all the Derry stuff, and he goes to Florida and teaches for a while, and then he spends a ton of time like putting the plays together and stuff. And I feel like it's, I'm not sure if this is symptomatic of Stephen King or not, but he does spend a lot of time, on these things that ultimately, I'm not really sure why. Either he just is very prolific, which I think Stephen King is, judging by the volume of his work, but I think it's just, part of like a 1960s fantasy setting where he just wanted to make it really lived in. And I mean, the man did perform a lot of research on this, but
he's a goddamn good writer.
Yeah,
I mean, I enjoyed every minute of reading about the high school plays. I don't know why, but I was like, I'm glued to the book. This is a well-written book because I don't care about these high schoolers, but he makes me care.
Right.
That's awesome. I'll read every page.
Like sadly, his whole like courtship with Sadie and stuff like that. When he started just hanging out, stalking Lee, I was like, go back to high school. I was all invested in it.
I don't know. What do you think, John?
I thought it was great. We read so many books where there's a lot of tech and a lot of science explanation. I love that stuff, but I agree. I found myself caught in the love story, and I also they made several references to swing dancing and swing being sort of their intersection point for their relationship, and as a new and. I really like swing dancing.
As a pro swing dancer, John, don't sell yourself short.
This is my plug for swing dancing. Anyway, two viewers.
But actually, I'm gonna have to say I don't agree with you guys valuing the writing style thing. I just was like, get on with the plot. Like I get it. You're teaching. You're getting the kids to do a play. How about freaking saving the world or whatever? Get back to that.
I mean, the last character was buying cheap meat, so I mean, this is upgrade, man.
I guess
Wait till you read Owl's book. Like, there's like it's like Ender's Game has the bean story and everything like that. Like, you just got to read Owl's version of the book. Like the guy who makes hamburgers with cheap meat from the past. You would be like, oh my god, please let me read the other book.
800 pages of him just stepping into the closet, buying meat.
Flipping burgers. Oh, the burgers today. Just the same as yesterday.
That's right.
Maybe I should save JFK and novel.
I'm in love with that butcher. Will I ever realize my love for her?
Also, why not look up the stock market instead of gambling and getting the crap kicked out of you?
Yeah,
At some point.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
That was not a good decision.
Also, I guess Al, like the past decided to kill Al with cancer instead of bookies. I guess that's just how the past dealt with him instead.
Yeah, I feel it's probably path of least resistance. The past was like, the obdurate past was like, oh, he smokes? I've got the perfect solution for this.
Cancer!
Cancer, apparently. Moving on to talk about a little bit more about the setting. I was lucky enough to have, did you guys have an afterword by Stephen King in the versions that you guys read?
9.
9, okay.
A very brief one. Yeah,
I did.
Yeah, pretty brief.
Afterward.
Yeah, so, and it was in the audiobook as well. And he talks a lot about the type of research that he did in this setting, which kind of supports, what I was thinking about. He's just like, this is like a 1950s/60s like porn. He's just like, wow, like things sure were great / awful in the 1950s and 60s. But anyway,
Root beer tastes better.
Yeah, that root beer sure is good, and that pie sure is good, and that racism sure was terrible. But how did you guys buy it? Like, as people that were born in the 80s, and all we have to go by is our What's in History books. How'd you guys think about how this was pulled off?
From having not lived in it, I think it was relatively accurate. To be honest, I thought it painted the picture pretty starkly true. That it was. He talked in a very disparaging way about Texas in the 60s, which I thought was brave because it was quite true.
There are so many guns there in the present.
Usually not talked about in the history books. Really, the South in general.
pretty much anything I've heard about like the JFK shooting, it's kind of like the setting for that is almost like it's surprising that more people weren't trying or something, that Dallas was just that crappy.
I really enjoyed his portrayal of the past, and I think that's part of the reason why I enjoyed reading the book, was that I felt that I was getting like educated through my reading, because it was like, oh, I have more insight about the era. I know more about the assassination. I understand some of the conspiracy theories by reading this sci-fi book, which I don't usually get from sci-fi, because sci-fi is usually like purely creative. Like, let's go to a world where nobody's ever been. This is like a world of my own mind.
Sure.
You, the reader, now enjoy everything I've imagined. But it was refreshing to be like, hey, I think I know a little bit more about the 60s. I know a little bit more about, like, some of the weapons they use, like, the really terrible rifles and pistols that they have, how they got around, like how there was like, it's kind of refreshing not to have Big Brother there being like, oh, we know everybody, and like we have like eyes on you, and like, a file and a dossier on you. It's just very interesting. It's very refreshing.
Like, even the FBI at the very end of the novel, after he has saved JFK, seems very clueless about him.
Yeah, he kind of pulls some strings to get away, but to me it did seem totally believable. And actually, while I was reading it, I was like, I wonder how much of this is actually, accurate. And I totally feel comfortable in saying it was probably pretty accurate.
Yeah, like even at like you said in the little afterword, he explains a couple parts where he's just like, yeah, that happened like a week after I said it did, but
yeah, some things here and there changed.
Are you pretty sure that ochre man is the right color? Because I wasn't sure if that part was 100% accurate.
I'm pretty sure you made that part up. All right. Well, so speaking of colored men and card-colored men, we talked a little bit about like how the yellow/green card guys make this novel science fiction. Let's talk more about them. First of all, can I say that this, as kind of like a sideline, there are a lot of people that cut their own throats in this novel, and I say that because the yellow card man kills himself like that at the start of the book when he comes back in time to actually go through the mission, and then there's at least one other character who does it that way.
It's almost like the book harmonizes, Stavros.
Oh gosh, we're not even going to talk about that.
Yeah, wasn't it Sadie's ex-husband?
Yeah. It's these characters that do it.
But there's a cross between what the words they use as well, between him and the guy who commits suicide in front of the.
Al?
He shoots himself. Yeah. No, not Al. Well, does Al do it too? Maybe. No, I don't think so. He says, if this is what you want.
Oh, the guy in Dallas. Yeah.
Yes, the guy in Dallas. Yeah.
All these guys that, yeah. But yeah, I mean, so as far as the yellow card man and the green card man, it makes the book sci-fi, but as a plot device, I feel like you guys are kind of not really sure if this was a good thing, like this element.
That was just my opinion, that it was kind of like he kind of already had the details figured out. Just let it stay mysterious, let him go to the future, and realized, oh, it doesn't want to be changed. I just screwed it up, and have him agonize about it afterwards, rather than have like a guy chase him and be like, but the plot.
Yeah. Seems fair. I thought it was good. It brought it into the science fiction realm. And
I thought it was
brought it out of
necessary.
fantasy.
I thought it was necessary to bring in another yellow card man. I thought it was necessary to bring that as a device so that we could show. I'm not necessarily sure whether or not just having natural phenomenon in a book that's beyond our understanding, whether or not that's sci-fi. But as soon as it becomes something that human beings are actively using like as a tool, or using in some way to manipulate their environment, then I feel like it's sci-fi. And I feel like that you needed to have the yellow card man come in and say, yeah, we're coming in here and we're watching, or we're using this for some purpose, and so are you. And it's a thing, and you're monkeying with it, and it's ruining things, but nonetheless you're using it. I thought it was required to make it a sci-fi book.
I thought it was good, but I felt like it was underutilized. I felt like there's much more potential for the future travelers to have some sort of ties to the past, rather than just be like extra, just like, guys who have no bearing on the past. Like, they could have had a name. It could have been like, oh, I am, some guy from 20, like, Stephen King is like, writing from 2020, like 2000. When did you write this book?
2011.
2011. He could have been like, "Oh yeah, this is Barack Obama," like, telling you don't change the past. Like, he could have like utilized some of these kind of present, future kind of people,
Right.
Or at least been like, "Oh, like maybe it's one of your descendants, or like maybe it's related to someone that you saved in the past, and that person is now a watchman in the future." Like, kind of tied it all together. But I kind of felt like they were just kind of underutilized, and maybe kind of like, hey, in case I ever get the chance to write a sequel, or like, write a book about it from a different perspective, those ochre guys, I'm going to flesh them out later.
That's true.
I just think novel-wise, it was more interesting with him agonizing over the uncertainty instead of at the end being like someone told him like, no, this is what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, that's interesting. And it kind of goes along with what I'm thinking. Like, I mean, this guy tells him, "You are destroying the space-time continuum if you keep doing this shit," but he doesn't really. All he does is tell him. And on the one hand, I'm like, that's interesting because it makes the main character, Jake takes the fate into his own hands, and there's some drama there. But I mean, if that was at stake, shouldn't he have just pulled out his phaser and vaporized him when he goes into the past? I mean, you're saving the space-time continuum. You probably want to do that.
Yeah, it just seemed like a poor plan to send people who are going to go crazy and just wait for them to kill themselves rather than
Shouldn't they get relieved at some point,
Yeah, it's just like, oh, look, there's a liquor joint. Let's just hang out there.
They didn't seem interventionist at all.
Yeah.
I mean, they were certainly concerned and they were affected, but there wasn't, Vince was talking about there could have been more there. There's no explanation as to why they're so non-interventionist.
I mean, Zach even said the first guy, Kyle, told Al, and Al just didn't care.
He needed that cheap hamburger meat, man.
Yeah, Al does not get painted well in this book.
Al almost destroyed reality making cheap cat burgers.
Oh man, geez, I just wish we had more time to talk about this book, but because there's so many interesting facets of it. But we have to go to final thoughts. So I'll start us off. Like I said, I was kind of waffling on it, just because of the sheer size. Like, I felt it was a little bit unfocused, a little bit like past porn, if that's a thing. It's like, wow, look at how great, like how much research I did. But then it kind of brings it together at the end for me. I really liked the yellow card man explanation and almost destroying reality. It kind of got back into like classic science fiction instead of just past porn, which I really liked. So I think that's it for me. And guess what? I'm gonna go to Charlie first. What?
Every time. It's almost like I knew it was going to happen.
Oh, good. That means you're prepared, right?
Anyways, I was just going to say, like,
The Obdurate past says, "Do not change the order."
I was going to say it's a little difficult to do my other reading while on a monthly podcast, but I do also read like period pieces and stuff like that. So being like, oh, this is how it was, and look at people doing like daily stuff and stuff like that kind of is also up my alley, sadly. So I enjoyed the book overall, and like I actually found some of the sci-fi stuff, some of the cheesier stuff. But like definitely I think the whole dairy thing and the dread and that and all that kind of personifies the book, and I really enjoyed it. I liked it. It's good.
Okay. How about you, John?
I like the book a lot. I had watched the show first on Hulu. I recommend both, though they're not necessarily identical. So I think you'll get value out of both. There's so much more scene painting. There's so much more to the story. I kind of agree with you that there was a lot of talk about, a lot of glorification about the history of the 1960s. Not glorification, not the right word, but it's just he paints a vivid picture, a lot of detail.
Yeah.
And I liked Ready Player One, which I in the middle of this book, I thought to myself, oh, this is similar in that way. I liked that version. I don't mind this one. So I thought it added texture to the novel, to what would have otherwise been a flat and predictable sort of thriller and race to stop the Kennedy assassination. Especially since we didn't really get an explanation for the sci-fi part till almost the end. Spoilers. So I think that the book overall was well written. I have no doubt that Stephen King is a great author because he writes books just like this.
Okay, awesome. And Vincent, go.
I think the book is extremely worthwhile for a number of reasons. The first being that it is really well written. I know some of you disagree, but I think it is really well written for a book that is that long to keep me engaged in all sorts of side stories and things like that. You have to have a very good, intriguing kind of writing style, and he really has a good sense of it. And if you are interested in writing at all, I think studying how he writes is kind of a really nice case study. Beyond that, I would say that writing sci-fi where you incorporate aspects of reality is really hard. Like, you can't have many inconsistencies, otherwise people who are historians will give you all sorts of shade, and they'll be very upset with like how you portray the past. But I think universally, Time Magazine and a bunch of other reviewers said he did a very good job of portraying the 60s. And honestly, it's an era that we didn't even live in. So I feel like if you even had any experience in the 60s, you were born there or born before it, it could be really interesting actually to read that book. And I feel like there's an extra level of like value to kind of being like, oh yeah, I totally remember those newspapers or those kind of settings. And a level of richness that we're missing out on that someone else might really enjoy. Like, how you were saying, John, that you really like Ready Player One. It's like, we enjoy Ready Player One because we have some sort of touch with the 80s and some of like the pop genre, like pop culture stuff that he was referencing. But if you were from the 60s, this book could have been freaking amazing. But we're not from the 60s, so we didn't appreciate that. The fact that we even enjoy it to the level that we do is almost like having like, my grandmother being like, oh yeah, Ready Player One, oh, that's such an awesome book. Like, even if she liked it a little bit, it's like, wow, like there must have been something really good about that book. So in the end, I have to say that this book was really well written. I wish more aspects of history were written kind of in a sci-fi way, because then I could say that I learned a little bit about that genre and like learned about that era in a very entertaining way without it being like a history book. Like, I feel like, I could take AP US history, that test again and be like, oh yeah, at least I could say something about the 60s intelligently, thanks to Stephen King, rather than just a straight boring textbook. So a good book. I would recommend reading it for just about anyone, actually.
Okay, awesome. Sounds like thumbs ups pretty much all around. But that does bring us about to the end of this episode. That's about all the time we have. So as usual, if you have feedback or suggestions on books we should read and discuss, you can reach us at subplotacoursepodcast@gmail.com. or on Twitter at subplotpodcast. And for next month's episode, we're going to be taking a look at Armada by Ernest Cline, for those Ready Player One fans, published in 2015.
So it's a sequel?
No. Different book.
Completely different. Okay.
Same writer, but a different book. All right, say goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye, everybody. You didn't say it right, Charlie. You're fired.
Damn it, I say it right every single episode and nobody does it and it's not a joke.